cbf.org.au.
Welcome to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. Whether you're listening live on Triple H 100.1 FM or via podcast, here's the show where you learn from experts, be inspired by journeys and discover more about making your small business a success. So despite the best intentions and our hard work in building relationships, sometimes it can all go to the proverbial. A dispute over an unpaid invoice, incomplete work, timing issues or workplace grievances can lead to your small business downfall. We're fearful of lawyers and the legal system. Perhaps generally we worry about being in trouble. But the legal system can support you. It can protect your rights and it can help you recoup losses and income which is rightfully yours. The role of the mediator is one which small businesses should familiarise themselves with. Crombie Pitts joins us today to explain the role of mediation, how Small Business Commissioned Officers works, and generally what the process is to resolve disputes. Welcome to the show, Crombie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's great to have you here in the studio. It's lovely to have people face to face while we still can. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
So the process of mediation when it comes to small business is, I guess it can be complex, but it can also be quite simple. In your opinion overall, does it depend on, I guess, what everyone's disputing as to how complex or simple that process can be?
Yes, it does. So, I mean, there are different types of mediation. We're talking today about small business in particular, but there is family mediation. But there might be a dispute over a business partnership where someone's retiring or they're selling the business. It could be a dispute, an employee with who's been overlooked for a promotion, for example, and then they want to have a dispute with their, so we're not supposed to technically with their employer, so that's more of a workplace dispute. It could be a dispute which is particularly common at the moment where there's a tenant, so it could be a cafe operator, pharmacist, who's in dispute with their landlord over the COVID-19 regulations, and they might be not getting what they're supposed to do under the regulations, so they're allowed to apply for a mediator to be appointed by the Small Business Commission. So that's a very common one at the moment.
So we're saying, it sounds to me like it tends to be between two parties where there's obviously a dispute over something. What is the difference between mediation and going to court?
That's a good question. So the main difference is the cost actually involved. So the cost of going to mediation is approximately, say, $1,500 to $3,500 a day, shared between the parties. If you went to court, you're talking thousands of dollars. So, and there is no guarantee of that you get a result. So there's you could have also, the trouble with court is it can be many months away, whereas with the mediation, it's really up to the two parties to agree a date with the mediator. So that could be within within a few days. So your resolution is much faster. The other thing is there's probably an 80% success rate for mediation.
Wow, that's really impressive.
It is, and which again you're not guaranteed at court. So I think that's, and the other thing to think about is that the decision is between the two parties. The mediator helps facilitate that, so you're getting a result which you're involved with rather than the court telling you what the result is. So
the mediator's role is not like a judge. They don't necessarily make a decision. They, I guess, listen to both parties and help the parties come to a decision. It's a very different role to someone who's a bit more dictatorial like a judge would be. It is.
So you're a facilitator. So you're bringing the two parties together. And obviously there can be a lot of emotion involved in some of these mediations. But you need to be patient and bring them together. And one of the things you can do in a mediation is you can go into breakout rooms, particularly online. Or private sessions, as they call it. So, and you can have a number of private. It doesn't have to be one. You can have a number of private sessions where you can vent really, or bounce ideas off the mediator.
I see. So so you've got two parties who are in dispute. You've got the mediator. So the mediator will speak to each of those parties individually, and then also together to help, so that everybody feels as if they're heard.
Yes. So you start off by sort of having an opening statement. The mediator talks about the process. each party has a chance to, I suppose, state their case. And then you would discuss the mediator would come up with a roadmap of the main issues, and you'd then discuss those and evaluate them, and then you would break into breakout rooms or
physically move into another room in the olden days.
Yes, absolutely. At the moment, all mediations are online, which is obviously. I mean, in a way, that's good because you don't have to waste time going into the city I think, I've been trained in mediation online, and I think, potentially I can mediate in Victoria. It doesn't have to be necessarily just in New South Wales.
Well, that's an interesting point about being trained for mediation online. Is that a different process for you as a mediator? Are you finding it easier to work with people because they're physically separated and you haven't got all that angst?
So one of the things to help make people more comfortable is you have a pre-mediation meeting or online discussion. So you really get to know the people and what the crux of the problem is. And then when you come together as a group at the mediation date, I suppose you're familiar with the parties. You still can understand. You still see their facial expressions. I mean, I agree. It's not. Ideally, lovely to all mediations to be face to face. But I think at this time, for the foreseeable future, they're going to be online.
So is that your preference to have things face to face? Do you find that people work better? I mean, to me, it's just throwing two people in the room who are literally at the point of almost vehemently hating one another would be terrifying. But you're saying it's almost better because it helps to resolve things?
Yes, I mean, yes, it is. It is better to do that. You can do sort of almost like shuttle mediation. So, for example, if one party is literally not on speaking terms with the other, you can do a situation where you would be in different rooms and the mediator would discuss points with each party and then would literally then go and tell the case to the other side.
It sounds to me like this is what I do with my two children, mediating between their discussions.
Naughty corner.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't imagine it being too dissimilar. So you're picking up each of those points that they're making and you're bringing it to the other person. My God, you must need a really good memory to be a successful
mediator. You do.
Mediator.
I mean, you make extensive notes. At the end of the mediation, actually, you're not allowed to keep your notes. You're supposed to dispose of them because the whole thing is private and confidential. So, so that's that's important. But no, I think it's you need to be impartial.
Yeah.
One of the things you can't do is you can't be prompting them to maybe think of ideas. So you can't lead them into a result, an outcome. You have got to be careful that you don't do that, even though you feel like you want to sometimes.
Yeah, because you can see the way out of this, and I guess the two parties may not be able to.
Yes. So it's really you're asking a lot of open-ended questions to make them think, and you're also saying to them things like, what would be the worst case scenario if we didn't settle today? Where do you see this going from here? And they might think, I'll have to go to court, or
it'll cost me a lot of money.
Yeah, or you. And the other thing is, either party can agree to stop the mediation at any time. If that happens, the mediator would obviously try and discuss why they want to do that, maybe on their own with that party. But they have a liability to they can stop the mediation, and so the mediator would then probably make some notes on a discussion on where you're up to that time, and then each party would sign that. And then you may decide to come back to mediation another time with the same mediator or someone new. So
in that instance, those notes are retained so that they can be passed on. But if it's resolved, then all of that evidence is destroyed.
Yeah, so it's called like a mediation agreement, effectively. So that's where you've got to. If a mediation fail, if for example you've been arguing all day, discussing all day.
No, it's okay. You can say arguing.
Then at the end of that time, you might say, look, we can't come to an agreement. And so the mediator can write up an agreement that says the mediation's failed. You can then take that to court. or you might decide to come back another day. You know, you might say, look, we need some time to think about this.
Or maybe to gather more evidence because it's heading in a particular direction and you might not have it with you.
The other thing is so for example, you can bring advisors into the mediation with you.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Is this a place for the lawyers or is that later?
No, you can. Yes, a lot of people bring their lawyers in. I mean, everyone has to sign a confidentiality agreement, including all the parties involved. So it's confidential. But yes, you can bring a lawyer in. Alternatively, you can call someone during the meeting. You know, when you're in your private session, you could actually go and make a call and get some advice on. You think you might be nearly at the point and you want some advice off your lawyer, you can go and do that.
Oh, right.
That's not an issue.
So it sounds to me like it's really flexible. I mean, you couldn't do that in a court, couldn't you? You could say, everyone stop and wait, I've just got to go and make a phone call.
Yeah, it's very flexible. You know, and obviously you have breaks but yeah, certainly, generally they take a few hours. I would generally say to someone, don't book half a day, leave a day aside. And, maybe at the end of the day, you might say to the mediator, look, we think we're nearly there, but we're going to need another couple of hours, and obviously that's something you accept. So, but generally they take a day. Some can take a few days. Some of the more complicated mediations with an ex-judge as a mediator, where it might be a very complicated case, could take a number of days.
You're listening to Small Biz Matters here on Triple H 100.1 FM. If you've just joined us, we're speaking to Crombie Pitts all about the issue and the scenario for small business mediation, which is becoming more and more common these days. It keeps you, by the sounds of it, keeps you out of the courts. It is a cheaper process. It may be a more resolving process, and it certainly is a faster process than going through the court system. Crombie, is there a sort of, you mentioned a couple of hours is typically how long these things can take. Is there, in your experience, are there types of cases that take longer? Is employment scenarios or workplace relations scenarios, do they take longer because they're sort of more emotive?
Not necessarily. I mean, they're definitely emotive. You generally find maybe an employee with the mediator will be employed by the employer to come in and mediate on behalf of between the party and maybe someone who their boss, for example. So you would generally, would be an hour, 2 hours. It wouldn't be too long, depending on what the case is. Mm-hmm. If it's a property matter, which I do a lot of, then it could be from, it could be 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours maybe, depending on what the result is. Or it can be quite short. They can agree to that we're not, we agree quite quickly. So it could be a couple of hours, so. But generally it's sort of 2 to 4 hours for a mediation. Yeah,
that's interesting because obviously you want it to be over and done with as quickly as possible. That's the point. So when you're choosing a mediator, wouldn't one party say, well, I'm not letting you choose and therefore it'll go both ways? So how can the process of even choosing mediator in the first place be on common ground?
So it depends on what industry you're in. So if it's in, say, retail property, you would, if you had a dispute with COVID regulations, you would apply to the Small Business Commission, mm-hmm. and they would appoint a mediator from their panel. If you were, and then the mediator would be, so that mediator would be appointed, and they would contact either. You actually are told who that mediator is, and depending on, you might say, "Oh no, one of the people might say, no, I've dealt with them before. I didn't like that mediator. I want someone else." So mm-hmm. They can go back and appoint someone else. Generally they're accepted because they've been their background has been looked at by the Small Business Commission. If it's something like employment, it could be or the accounting, could be an accounting issue. It might be someone from the CPA that's got a panel of mediators. And
so professional associations are a great place to start as well.
They are, yes.
Yeah. What if you're in the building and trades industry? Can you go to the Masters Builders Association?
Yes, you probably could. Yes, you could. And then they would. Oh, you can do a private mediation now. You basically. I came across one recently where there was a builder in dispute with a client over a final bill, mm-hmm. and they were referred to a mediator through their accountant. So I often get referrals through accountants and lawyers, and quite a lot of lawyers become mediators.
Is that because it's a bit easier? It's faster, more efficient?
Sometimes because it's when they want to look at retiring and think they can do it part time. But no, often it's because they're in arbitration or in that type of thing. So then there will be a lot of it is legal cases which get very complicated, and so that's not something that I practice in. But lawyers. You can imagine lawyers would choose people with a lawyer background as a mediator, probably. Yeah,
exactly. And someone who you get along with, because obviously the choosing process is important that you might have got a referral from someone, but someone that sort of suits who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's not like you're choosing someone who to represent you legally because you want a pit bull in your court when it's someone like that.
Absolutely.
But in this case, it's someone who's a good listener and listens to both parties. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters on Triple H 100.1 FM. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk to Crombie a little bit more about the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner and the type of support that is on offer right now for businesses out there, particularly in the space of code of conduct issues with retailers and commercial leases. You're listening to Triple H. We'll be back after this.
Since its inception a year ago,
New South Wales for updates. So if you've just joined us on Triple H, we were speaking to Crombie Pitts before the break, all about the process of mediation, how to look for a good mediator, who to ask for, and in particular, what the role of the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner is in these scenarios. So, Crombie, you mentioned that the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner has panels of mediators that they select or you can choose from, I guess, when you've got a small business dispute. How does that process work as opposed to a private mediation?
So, the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner... they have a panel for about 3 years. So it's currently from September 19. They will be opening it up again shortly, I understand, because of I think they've had 450 applications a week at the moment, whereas normally there's 100 a week.
And
so
a lot of that is because of the commercial leasing issue and the code of conduct.
It's because of COVID, definitely. Yeah, with tenants in dispute with the landlord and the landlord not taking no disregard for the regulations and just ignoring them. And so the option is to apply for mediation. The only issue is if it doesn't work, then you still got to go to court. So that's, as a small business, that's the issue, is that could cost you quite a lot of money.
And so, time as well.
Time and stress. Yeah, a lot of stress involved. So, the panel is appointed from as I say, you apply to go on the panel, and you have to have the national accreditation to be on the panel. And then there's different types of mediators, so with different experience in different matters. So the New South Wales Business Commission would choose a person suitable to the particular case. Mm-hmm. So when you apply to the Small Business Commission, you have to fill in a form that basically sets out like your statement of what the case is about, mm-hmm. what the discussion is, the dispute, and each party fills that in and sends it back to.
So could I just ask you there, do you need to have both parties agreeing to mediation in order for the mediation to occur?
No, you don't.
So you could take someone to mediation,
for
want of a better word, and say to them, look, I'm going through this process. Are they legally obliged to fill out the paperwork under the cases of the Code of Conduct for
and
commercial
the retail leases that they are, but I know for a fact that there are some landlords that still refuse to do that. So, and they've even locked people out as well.
Are they the big ones or the small ones?
The smaller ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
the big ones are playing ball, really.
Well, they have to, otherwise they'll get hauled through the media.
Yeah, but I mean, the option is, if you're locked out, you can ring the Small Business Commission for advice. There's a free helpline, and they will give you advice about getting a mediator appointed as soon as possible.
When you're literally locked off out of the property?
Yes.
That's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
Happen?
It does happen, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And is that, I guess that happens normally out of COVID times because there is a code of conduct anyway that exists, but there is more power to the people who are lessees at the moment as opposed to the landlords, right?
Yes, there is, yeah. I mean, landlords... most landlords are doing the right thing and are giving this rent-free or waiver, deferment of the amount, half the amount, depending on. But you have to be on JobKeeper and you have to be loss of more than 30%. So some people are only just close to that, and others have really lost a lot of money.
Yeah, particularly those with the bricks and mortar retail situation who haven't been able to pivot online very quickly.
Definitely, yeah.
So the process is you go to the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner. At the moment, it tends to be a lot of questions around leases and that code of conduct, but it does happen generally. The New South Wales Small Business Commission will also work in the other mediation space as well. Do they do Fair Work stuff?
To be honest, no. No, they don't. So they just do the New South Wales Small Business Commission is mainly for property, but the Fair Work would also have. So there's an ombudsman who would appoint mediators. So again, there's another panel on that one. The advantage of a mediator at the moment is I can mediate in any state. So I think particularly with Victoria at the moment, there's a lot of cafe operators and restaurants affected by COVID and being closed, locked down, and those disputes can go to the Victorian panel, and they could potentially appoint someone from New South Wales.
Oh, right. So the fact that your the accreditation is a national accreditation, it means it can be across all states, which is handy. Which
is unusual because a lot of I'm a licensed real estate agent. That's for New South Wales, so you have to be you have to have a slightly different qualification for Queensland. So it's quite unusual to have a national accreditation for something.
Yeah, for anything really. Yeah, I mean that is a case. I think a lot of people would speak in terms of I think it's because a lot of legislation is state-based, not just federal-based.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So people go to have a mediation. That process, I presume, is the same as if you went through a private process. People can pull out at any time.
Yes, it is.
Tell me about a scenario where you felt, an example of where you felt that it really just wasn't working and it was your call to end the mediation. Does a mediator have the right or the ability to end the mediation because it's just not going anywhere?
Yes, they can. Yeah, so the mediator can stop the mediation at any time, as can either party. So, as I mentioned before, you would, if that was happening and the mediator could see that it was close on settlement, then they would try and bring that party back online, by having a private chat with them and seeing if there was something they could, assist. Sometimes people. The mediator might say, well, is that something you want to bring up when we get back together in the group? Or other times, then person might say, well, can the mediator bring that up to the other side? So it almost depends on, not to say how brave you are, but sometimes it's better to come from the mediator rather than from the other party. So they feel there's a middle ground.
Yeah, well, that is the point of having that person there, because then they're not feeling pressured by the other party as well. That takes away that. And in terms of taking away that raw emotion, has there ever been a case where you felt, I guess, not personally involved, but quite emotionally involved, and it's been difficult for you?
I've had a mediation where it was a franchisee who was in a major shopping centre who had her lease ended early. It was like 3 years into a 5-year lease because of a redevelopment. And unfortunately, then the hoardings appeared all around the tenancy before everyone else. So she was still open, everyone else was getting closed down. So you basically allowed a compensation based on your fit-out, depreciated fit-out. And I just don't think she was given the right... she wasn't really... They weren't very helpful in making it easy for her. You are allowed to be offered different leases in the tenancy, but they weren't really similar. So she had to close. So she was 3 years into a 5-year lease, built the business up, and then that was the end of it, really. So she felt very aggrieved. So she was very emotional. She did have a lawyer with her. The other side had a lawyer as well, so a big I won't say who landlord it is, but it was a big landlord. So
they had a big lawyer?
They had a big lawyer.
I'm just seeing a big David and Goliath battle here. Oh, so, of course they did. Yeah. A panel of lawyers.
But the end of it was the decision that eventually she got a result which I thought was reasonable, but I think because the lawyers were both involved, it got a bit difficult, a bit awkward, and I think she was sort of making sure a lawyer was doing most of the talking rather than her. I think, but I just don't think she got really the result she could have done.
So when lawyers talk, it almost takes the emotion out of it. And is it more of an emotive process in mediation than going to the courts, because you've got people talking to one another as opposed to lawyers?
Absolutely, definitely
staring at each other.
It's much more emotive, but also to your advantage. I mean, you can take breaks when you want to, people. So I think it's a way of, you really get the result, hopefully. I mean, like in anything, with a decision on a negotiation, sometimes one party feels they've had a better result than the other. Hopefully with a mediation, you feel like you've had a sort of a compromise.
So when you're about 3/4 of the way through it and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and you can see that there's a possibility, is it about people compromising? So, party A might walk in with a list of demands, party B has a list of these demands, and you kind of shuffle the cards around the table until they balance. Is that
definitely. And I mean, I think the other important thing is that you're talking to each party about what's the worst case scenario that could happen, and the best case scenario. So the worst case scenario might be that you don't agree and you go to court, which is going to cost you more money.
And time and
stress. So I think that's the advantage of, you're almost showing your hand with a mediation, whereas in court, you're maybe not showing your hand. So you're very transparent with the other party.
And then if you've gone through that process and it does end up going to court, can you give us an example of when you had to just shut it down and say, well, this is just not working?
It's one with a landlord who just wouldn't accept the COVID regulations, even though they're the law. So it's a private landlord, and eventually he just wouldn't negotiate really at all. So I discussed it with the tenant, and they were happy to go to court. So,
well, I was going to say, is it whoever has the most money wins? I mean, does it come down to, I guess, obviously it's in everybody's best interest to go through the mediation process and finish it there. But do you often see people who are in a position of power taking advantage of that and just going, nah, I'm going to be stubborn, I might be dragged in here.
Yeah, but hopefully the mediator can, take the emotion out of this situation, which is, definitely the mediator's job, to take that away, empower the decision there. But, so...
Indeed. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters. When we come back after the break, we're going to speak some more about the process of mediation in the case of small business and how it differs from other types of mediation that you might be experiencing in other parts of your life. You're listening to Triple H. We'll be back after this. Helping you promote it. So today we're talking to Crombie Pitts all about the process of mediation. Now, Crombie, just before the break, you were letting us know about what happens when you're working with an agency such as the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner and that process. Mediation happens in lots of different areas of life. What are some other ways that people might use a mediator apart from in a small business dispute?
So I think, as I mentioned, employment is another place that you might go to mediation through your workplace. Could be I'm just thinking. Could be a builder going to court against someone like that. Oh, sorry, not going to court, going to mediation.
Is that like a contractual mediation where a contract was broken, for example?
Yeah, it can be. Sometimes. So it could be things like could be a franchisee. Of a cafe that's fallen out with their franchisor, and maybe they've applied to their registered body, and then they've recommended a mediator. That's pretty common, actually. There is quite a lot of franchise disputes.
And is that because they had an agreement as to when they became a franchisee, they paid all this money, they were expecting XYZ, marketing material, collateral, help, support, and they just weren't getting it? Is that how that
definitely
tends to work?
That sort of thing. And sometimes, a franchise may just be like a lot of Michelle's patisseries. They were quite expensive to buy in the past, and maybe they just weren't the right operator, and they haven't. They've struggled, and they've been talking to the centre management team, and so the next thing they do is then go back to their franchisor, and maybe start arguing about how much they're paying for marketing, and so it's expensive for some of the franchises. I think some people retire and think, we'll buy a franchise, and you have to make sure you're going with open eyes, because... Well,
I was going to ask about that, actually, because you mentioned that the mediation process is it's confidential.
Yes.
But if you are shopping around for a franchise, and by the sounds of it, there seems to be a lot of mediation, like things going on in that world, how do you know that a particular... Because when it's in the courts, it's public knowledge, isn't it? But when it's mediated, it's not.
It's private, yeah. Well, I suppose with things like Michelle's Patisserie, or say something like that, something like a Brumby's Bakery, I think it's really maybe going in and talking to the one of the operators and asking them what their experience. And, that could be confidential. But I think that's the best way to find out.
Ask around, use your connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Go and ask people. People generally are happy to talk about it. And particularly if they're doing very well, they'd be happy to talk to you. And if they're not doing well, they'll also be happy to talk to you probably.
So you don't make the same mistakes as they did, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the best thing. Other mediation could be under the accountancy or the law society, where there's been a case that lawyers get involved with. As I say, there's quite a lot of lawyers that become mediators, so somebody could be quite a difficult case. It could be a DA issue. So that would go through local government, and again they would appoint a mediator. So that does happen quite a lot. It could be a neighbour dispute over a fence. That could go to mediation.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of examples of where
there
it's
are a lot of
used.
examples. Yeah,
and it sounds to me that it's a great thing because it keeps people from clogging up the court system when otherwise it could just
it's pretty cost effective. It's not too expensive. It's shared by both parties as well.
Indeed. So tell me, Crombie, where can people find out more about the mediation process in general? Is there a sort of a professional association that has information?
There's a mediation standards board, which you can find out about mediation, and there is also so I'm an accredited mediator. So NMAS is the National Mediation Accreditation Standards. So that's if you just Google how do I find a mediator, it will come up with that on the Mediation Standards Board, and you can put in my name and it will tell you if I'm accredited or not. So, which I am.
Hopefully, just quickly double check. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing with us all of your knowledge about the process, how the New South Wales Small Business Commission and how other government bodies support small business as well. And, of course, people can find you on LinkedIn, I presume?
Yes, they can. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us here on Small Biz Matters, Crombie. If you've missed any of today's program, you can catch up via smallbizmatters.com.au, where there are now 170 podcasts to download, listen, educate, be fascinated by, learn, and listen to experts just like Crombie Pitts today. Thank you very much for joining me here on Triple H 100.1 FM. We'll be back next week.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4.